Every year, we celebrate the 4th of July with fireworks and barbecues. But how much do we really know about this iconic day? Sure, it marks our independence from Britain, but did you know the US didn't officially declare it on July 4th? Or that one founding father refused to celebrate it altogether? And get this, 3 US presidents died on the 4th of July. Coincidence? Maybe. Spooky? Absolutely. This video isn't just about history lessons. It's about the surprising and often overlooked facts behind America's birthday. From political ironies to strange deaths, the 4th of July is full of quirks you wouldn't expect. So before you grab that apple pie or light up those fireworks, let's uncover the real stories behind this day. Get ready for 10 mind-blowing facts that will change how you see the 4th of July forever. Despite what your school textbooks might have said, and what the fireworks would have you believe, the United States didn't officially declare independence on July 4th, 1776. The real date? July 2nd, 1776. That's when the Continental Congress actually voted in favor of breaking ties with Britain. In fact, John Adams was so certain July 2nd would be remembered as America's Independence Day. He even wrote to his wife Abigail saying the 2nd would be celebrated with pomp and parade, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations. So what happened on July 4th? That's when the final text of the Declaration of Independence was formally approved. It was basically a paperwork day, important, yes, but not the actual vote for independence. Even more confusing? Most of the 56 signers of the Declaration didn't put their names on it until August 2nd, nearly a month later. But July 4th got all the glory because the printed copies of the Declaration were dated that day. And those copies were what the public first saw. The myth stuck, and eventually, so did the celebration. So the next time someone shouts, "Happy Birthday, America," on the 4th, just know, the real breakup happened 2 days earlier. July 4th is basically America's Facebook official date with independence. When we picture the signing of the Declaration of Independence, we often imagine all the founding fathers gathered in a grand room, dramatically signing the document on July 4th, 1776. Cue the inspirational music. But in reality, that scene is mostly a myth. Of the 56 total signers, only 2 men, John Hancock and Charles Thompson, actually signed the Declaration on July 4th. The rest didn't sign it until weeks later, and some even months after that. So why the confusion? Because the official printed copies, called the Dunlap broadsides, were dated July 4th, even though the physical signing mostly took place on August 2nd. Those early prints were rushed out to spread the news and rally support, even though the ink hadn't dried on most of the real signatures yet. The idea of a single momentous signing day makes for great paintings and powerful storytelling. But the truth is that the process was much slower, messier, and more bureaucratic. Just like any major decision, it took time to get everyone on board, literally. So while July 4th remains the symbolic birthday of the United States, the actual autograph party was fashionably late. Most of the founding fathers weren't in the room when the date we now celebrate was printed on history's most famous parchment. You'd think one of the most important founding fathers would be the first to raise a glass every 4th of July. But not John Adams. In fact, he refused to celebrate it because he thought the wrong day was being honored. Adams was firmly convinced that July 2nd, not July 4th, was the true Independence Day. After all, that's the day the Continental Congress voted to approve the break from Britain. To him, that was the defining moment, the actual Declaration of Independence, not the formal approval of the document. He even wrote a letter to his wife, Abigail, saying, "The 2nd day of July, 1776, will be the most memorable epocha in the history of America." He believed it would be celebrated by future generations with parades, fireworks, and festivities. He just got the date wrong, at least according to everyone else. So when July 4th became the accepted date for America's birthday, Adams took it personally. He reportedly refused to attend events on that day out of principle. Even as the rest of the country waved flags and shot off fireworks, Adams quietly held his ground. In a twist of fate, Both John Adams and his once rival-turned-friend Thomas Jefferson died on July 4, 1826, exactly 50 years after the signing of the Declaration. Almost poetic. But for Adams, the celebration was always 2 days late. The Liberty Bell is one of the most iconic symbols of American independence. If you picture July 4, 1776, you might imagine it ringing loudly in Philadelphia to mark the birth of a new nation. Except, it didn't. In reality, the Liberty Bell was never rung on July 4, 1776. In fact, there's no historical record proving it rang that day at all. The famous tale that it rang to announce independence comes from a fictional children's book written 70 years later in the 1800s. Over time, that myth got repeated so often that people started to believe it was fact. But historians agree, the bell was probably silent on the 4th. To make things even less dramatic, the Liberty Bell was already cracked by the 1840s, and it couldn't be rung anymore. Today, it's mostly symbolic. Beautiful, iconic, and very, very still. That's not to say the bell had no role in American history. It was used to summon lawmakers to meetings and to alert citizens of public announcements. But it wasn't the soundtrack to the Declaration of Independence. So, while school books and paintings might show the Liberty Bell proudly clanging away on America's birthday, the truth is more muted. It wasn't the sound of freedom, but it did become a lasting symbol of it. In the end, it's not always about what really happened, but about what we choose to remember. Nothing says Happy 4th of July like a booming fireworks show lighting up the night sky. Explosions of red, white, and blue have become the signature celebration of American independence. But here's a twist you might not expect. Most of those fireworks are made in China. Despite being a deeply American tradition, about 95% of the fireworks used in the US are imported, and the overwhelming majority come from, you guessed it, China. It's a strange irony considering the 5th of July celebrates America's separation from a foreign power. The connection runs even deeper. Fireworks themselves originated in ancient China over 1,000 years ago. They were first used to scare off evil spirits and were later adopted for celebrations. Eventually, they made their way to Europe and then to colonial America. By the late 1700s, fireworks were already part of patriotic festivities. In fact, John Adams, yes, the same guy who refused to celebrate on July 4th, wrote that independence should be commemorated with illuminations from one end of this continent to the other. Fast forward to today, and those illuminations come full circle, made in the very land that invented them. So next time you're gazing up at a dazzling fireworks display on Independence Day, remember, while the spirit is American, the spark often comes from halfway around the world. A fitting reminder that even our most patriotic moments are stitched together by global threads. The 4th of July is supposed to be a celebration of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But strangely enough, it's also a day marked by presidential deaths. And not just one, 3 US presidents died on Independence Day. Let's start with the most famous and eerie coincidence. John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, both founding fathers and former presidents, died on July 4, 1826, exactly 50 years after the Declaration of Independence was adopted. They were once political rivals, later reconciled as friends, and they passed away within hours of each other, on the golden jubilee of American independence. Adams' last reported words were, "Thomas Jefferson survives," not knowing Jefferson had already died earlier that same day. But the strange pattern doesn't end there. Exactly 5 years later, on July 4, 1831, James Monroe, the 5th President of the United States, also died. That's 3 out of the first 5 presidents passing away on America's birthday. Statistically, that's weird. Historians and spiritual thinkers have debated the significance ever since. Some see it as poetic, a closing of a historic chapter. Others chalk it up to coincidence. But regardless of your view, it gives the 4th of July a strangely bittersweet undertone. For a day dedicated to beginnings, The fact that it also marked the end for some of the country's earliest leaders adds a layer of mystery that textbooks rarely explore. Today, the 4th of July is a given. A day off work, parades in the streets, fireworks at night. But what if I told you that Independence Day wasn't even an official federal holiday until nearly a century after the Declaration of Independence was signed? That's right. July 4th didn't become a recognized federal holiday until 1870, almost 94 years after 1776. While Americans had been celebrating it informally with bonfires, cannons, and public readings of the Declaration, there was no legal recognition until Congress passed a bill that grouped it with other public holidays like Christmas and New Year's Day. Even then, it didn't become a paid federal holiday for government employees until 1938. So why the delay? Well, early America was focused on building a nation, fighting wars, writing constitutions, settling disputes. The idea of formalizing holidays took a backseat to survival and governance. Plus, the 4th was already being celebrated by the people, so lawmakers probably didn't feel rushed to stamp it with federal approval. But when it did become official, it helped unify a post-Civil War nation by honoring shared ideals: liberty, independence, and national pride. So while July 4th may feel like it's always been carved into the American calendar, the truth is that it took nearly a century for the government to catch up to what the people were already doing, celebrating freedom their own way. What's more American than eating a hot dog on the 4th of July? Maybe fireworks, but hot dogs are definitely a close second. It turns out, this iconic Independence Day snack owes its fame not just to patriotism, but to a quirky seaside spot, Coney Island. Back in the late 1800s, a German immigrant named Charles Feldman started selling sausages and buns from a pushcart in Coney Island. The idea was simple but genius. No plates or utensils needed. It was the perfect food for crowds enjoying the beach, rides, and boardwalk. But it was Nathan Handwerker, Feldman's former employee, who made the hot dog a national sensation. In 1916, Nathan opened Nathan's Famous, selling hot dogs for just 5 cents, half the price of Feldman's. People loved the affordable, tasty treat, and it wasn't long before Nathan's hot dogs became the go-to street food of summer. The connection to the 4th of July really took off when Nathan's Famous began hosting its now famous hot dog eating contest, a tradition that started, legend has it, on July 4th, 1916, to settle a dispute about who was the most patriotic among friends. Today, Americans eat over 150 million hot dogs on July 4th alone, all thanks to some savvy immigrants, a beachside snack stand, and a bit of competitive eating. So next time you bite into a hot dog during the fireworks, remember, it's not just lunch. It's a weird, wonderful piece of American history. The 4th of July may be wrapped in flags and lit up with fireworks, but as we've seen, it's so much more than a summer celebration. Behind the sparklers and barbecue lies a holiday filled with strange facts, surprising twists, and a few myths we've accepted as truth. From the real date of independence to a hot dog empire built on a Coney Island boardwalk, America's birthday is layered with quirky backstories that give it even more meaning. We've learned that some founding fathers didn't sign on July 4th, that one refused to celebrate it altogether, and that the Liberty Bell was probably silent when the nation was born. We also discovered that fireworks, the very symbol of patriotic celebration, mostly come from the country that invented them 1,000 years ago. And the fact that 3 US presidents died on the bee? That's the kind of coincidence that makes you pause and wonder. But maybe that's what makes the 5th of July truly special. It's not perfect, polished history. It's a living, evolving story. A mix of legend and fact, solemnity and celebration, tragedy and triumph. Just like the country it honors. So the next time you hear the boom of a firework or taste that first bite of a grilled hot dog, remember, you're not just celebrating independence. You're celebrating a wonderfully weird, uniquely American tradition that's still being written today.